Hi, everyone, and welcome to the World of Work podcast. This podcast is a topic spotlight series and brought to you by Autism Valued Incorporated, previously known as Asperger's Victoria, and in relation to our World of Work initiatives. My name is Jacob Allen, and I lead all things employment related for the AV community, and I do this work with lived experience as my backbone. With my own diagnosis of autism, ADHD, and Tourette syndrome. We are a small non-profit doing big work, and this podcast is simply a means of trying to let more people know who we are and what we do. I hope you enjoy what we have to say. Let's get into it. Welcome back, everyone, to the second episode of the World of Work podcast. I'm once again joined by my guest and co-host for today's recording, Jeremy Nagel, and we're going to be continuing our conversation around the world of work. And our today, right in this session, today's topic is around the productivity debate, or it's titled "The Productivity Debate." And really, what I'm trying to capture in this conversation is trying to hear from Jeremy and again just have an open dialogue with Jeremy around just some of the nuances regarding neurodiversity at work or just productivity in the workplace and what it means to be a high functioning or a high performing individual, or just some of the things that workplaces maybe view wrongly when it comes to productivity and return on investment and value and stuff of their staff. So, uh, welcome, Jeremy. Before we jump into this real quickly, do you just want to let the guests know a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I've been a software developer for most of my career, and productivity is definitely something that comes up as part of that. And in the last couple of years, I've pivoted towards running my own business. And also, I'm doing a PhD at the moment looking at how to support neurodivergent people to be productive and also improve their well-being.
Yeah. And what's your app? Your app's somewhat aligned with that, is it not? Do you want to give that a bit of a plug real quick?
Yeah, and I've got an app called Focus Bear, which is about supporting people to be productive by removing some of the distractions that can get in the way.
So, viewers, you can see exactly why I thought Jeremy was great one to have this conversation with. Um, so yeah, Jeremy, when you think about the world of work and being a neurodiverse person trying to, well, when you were getting into work or I know you work for yourself largely now, but can you reflect on some sort of experiences around how, I guess, you view yourself as a productive member of the workforce, or um, have you maybe just how you've changed your perspective on productivity and what that means overall?
Yeah, sure. I think that stereotypical definition of productivity is output divided by input, that we expect to get as much as possible done in a short amount of time as possible. And ideally, that the output should be consistent over time. And I think that part about the consistency is the part that's hardest for me personally, and probably for neurodivergent people in general,
Yeah.
because unfortunately, I'm not a machine. And there's two aspects to that. One is that there tends to be, I guess, a difference in how neurodivergent people produce output, that we tend to have moments of insight and periods of hyper focus where we can get a huge amount done in a very short amount of time.
Mm.
And that can be amazing in that sometimes I can do a week's worth of work in half a day.
Yeah.
And that feels great. But then it's also a bit of a trap, because then I start to expect that I can do that all the time, and it can set up expectations for that as well, which lead to burnout. And we talked a bit about that in the previous episode, about how work demands led to burnout for you. Do you want to talk about it from your perspective as well, about productivity and how your own personal experience of productivity?
Yeah. So you make a reflective point there. Yeah, it almost felt personal. Um, Yeah, in the sense of just giving a lot, and yeah, being burnt out. The way I guess I can speak to that is I view it as like riding a wave because yeah, as you know, there's times where we're great, and there's other times where you don't want to get out of bed. To some people, that can look like depression. Funny enough, like you're so motivated, you go, 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 go. You're that sort of person. Then now you don't want to get out of bed, but that can sort of be a dopamine thing. That can be the interest. That can be the realizing that you can't sustain that too long. But yeah, you have to, we sort of, the data shows that that's part of the neurodiverse condition, that we're going to lock in and provide 10 times more value than anyone doing the thing that we're really interested in and really hyper focused in, and that. But yeah, in the other hand, where it's other things that we are no good at, and we've spent so much of, if we talk about, there's a thing called spoons. You probably know about the spoons, the theory of managing energy.
Mm.
Well, yeah, if we give all our spoons to the things that we're hyper focused on, then there's just naturally no energy left for the rest. So, um, yeah, I think a large part of the success in that is learning how to ride the wave. Um, Funny enough, I'm working on a book to try and tackle that subject. So, um, but yeah, it's rightfully going to be titled "Ride Your Wave," and yeah, it's understanding that some days, and depending on what you're locked in on and what your interest is, or essentially the purpose and the passion, what's the most practical and um, that to you, then you can start building that into your world of work. So I mentioned to you uh, before we jumped on and started recording this that um, something I actually have in place as a scaffold in my own work is I have essentially an assistant, an executive functioning support, basically, um, which kind of works so I can hyper focus on the things that I am really good at and apply the 80/20 rule. Um, but I never had that. I had to, I did it all myself first, and then yeah, I've got to that point where I can have that, and it's shown a lot of great results, allowing me to focus on the things that are my key um, strength areas. But yeah, it's a tricky terrain, and there's no avoiding it. There is no. A lot of people in this scenario, they talk about work-life balance or balance. I argue if it exists, to be honest, at least for a person on the spectrum.
Yeah, I find that hard as well because work becomes my special interest,
Yep.
and for me, productivity, if I measure it, I have to make it more holistic because if I solely focus on work, I'd very happily work 12, 14 hours a day.
Yeah.
But I've got a 5-month-old son, and productivity from my wife's perspective would include me being there to
Yeah.
play with him and look after him and make sure he goes to bed on time. And so there's an element of having to hold it back at times.
Mm.
And that also goes back to the point around burnout that I've experienced too, that I have to be very careful about hyperfocus because there's the hyperfocus crash cycle where I get really into something and I work on it all day. And then by the end of the day, I've got a migraine because I've been staring at the screen the whole time and I haven't drunk any water and I'm really debilitated by the end of the day. So it's important for me in terms of my own personal productivity to not just think about today, but to think about how can I be productive over a month?
Mm.
And that involves bringing in rest, both within a day and within a week as well, so that I can be productive until I'm 100 like you.
So what I love about that is, to me, it sounds like you're essentially in the fitness world. That's called calorie banking, where a lot of people think they've got to stick to a certain amount of calories consumed each day. But when you look at it over the long run, over the week, as long as you balance it out over the week and over the long run, that consistency, it doesn't, matter if you have a few extra hundred one day if you're balancing it out. So it's really interesting that you seem to apply a very similar process to the way you manage your life. And of course, you know, if people follow AV or listen to the last episode or know of me, I do quite a bit. And, I couldn't do it if I was in your shoes. Having a kid, um, yeah, it's a lot. So, yeah, when those sort of things, become real for me, then yeah, there'd be some big changes that I have to make in the sense of how I be productive. And for myself, I'd imagine some of that might be moving towards written work and doing more podcasts and stuff, so that I can reach more people, you know, with the voice, and sort of get more bang for the buck in the work I'm doing,
Mhm.
versus say working one to one with clients and students and stuff to reach their goals. Kind of giving more of myself as a voice and advisor out. But
Mm.
so yeah, naturally it changes. Yeah, that's why I kind of like to use the thing of riding a wave, and scenarios change so much. But yeah, in the world of work context, um, yeah, I suppose, is there anything when you reflect on some of your past employers, how they viewed you as a team member, is there anything in regards to the productivity discussion that you can um, maybe reflect on there, and how that's different to being in control of that now? Because essentially you control your hours and you have a kid. Like, imagine if you're in this situation now where a lot of people are, where you have an employer who dictates every moment of your schedule, and you have to balance it around there. Is there anything else you could reflect on there?
Yeah, I think the other thing in terms of maximizing output is I need to care, and you spoke about that as well last time. That I give so much more if I understand the why behind the work,
Yep.
and I've found that to be an issue in some jobs where I was treated like a cog in the machine versus other jobs where they were very much about explaining the mission and the vision to everyone and expecting everyone to rise to the occasion and help. And I think that's an easy adjustment that most workplaces could make
Yeah.
to explain the significance behind the work. And then
Yeah.
that tends to bring the best out of me, and I think the best out of most people as well.
I think what, but when I'm reflecting, you saying that, it's like, people want to think like the CEO. That's a term that's often used, but yeah, at the same time, people want to be connected to the CEO. So I think a part of that too is when you feel disconnected from the org at large, and you don't feel like you have a stake in the game, but you're spending most of your life working for them. You're like, I spend one third of my like living, breathing life for you. I want to feel like I'm part of this. I got something in it.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, maybe that's why a lot of neurodiverse people uh, thrive in entrepreneurial endeavors and the startup world, and things that are a little bit abstract, and you know whether that's the autistic side of that, who like the detail and the structure and things, or the chaotic part of the ADHD in that world. But um, yeah, it's there's no one size fits all sort of approach with it, is there?
Mm. Yeah, true. And I think that that might also go back to what you were saying as well about finding the type of work which is your strength. When you were talking about the benefit of having someone to back you up, I've got those type of supports as well. People who handle HR for me and filling out forms, things that I don't really enjoy doing that much
Yep.
myself. So
Do
that
I
I,
happen to know your HR lady by any chance? I feel like is it?
Christine,
Oh, no, no. Like I say, our friend Michelle, she's in HR. She could lean on her for some.
yeah, she's an excellent advisor.
Yeah,
That,
she's great.
mm,
And yeah, so it sounds like we met through, I guess, similar circles. And I never, I mentioned in the last episode that I never disclosed my neurodiversity until I came to AV. So naturally, I never had the circle around me. I sort of understood it, and you know views it as a strength in the way I do. So yeah, I think it's really important to that, is, yeah, it comes down to that social model that I spoke about in the previous episode, where it's the value is, yeah, I suppose, like, a painting has different value to a museum than it does just an everyday person on Facebook Marketplace kind of thing.
mm,
Um, and yeah, I think a lot of people got to rethink that, because yeah, in my work, I'm highly productive, but none of that matches a traditional role. A lot of what I do is around breaking down roles into tasks, and now I'm just task focused. That's a lot of it. Us on the spectrum are task focused. So, the more that an employer can break that down into tasks, the more productivity they're going to get from an individual, more productivity they're going to get from a team overall. Because one of the issues with productivity is we're expecting someone to be everything too. It's like, how can you expect someone to be productive in their role as a, you know, designer, whatever their key thing is, if it's a builder or someone, but they're spending all their time. So like the example we used before this, there's probably not much value me having all my time spent in spreadsheets and in other things, is there? So if I'm being looked at because a large part of if that's 50% of the background role, but then, you know, I'm productive in the other 50%, why not break them up?
Mhm.
And, bring in more people, split that role into two, have people focus on their strengths.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I think once we're a lot more productive when we got the autonomy and
Mm. Yeah, and that's maybe also a view that not everyone would have, and that goes to one of the strengths of autism, that we sometimes notice things that are a bit like the emperor not wearing any clothes. Most people would just assume that's the way work is, that you just have to spend half the time doing drudgery, things that you don't enjoy, whereas you're looking at it completely differently. And I had that experience too with a role I had where there was a project that I was asked to work on, and it was actually really easy. The actual work in terms of writing code was probably 3 days worth of work. But the part that was hard was the organizational politics. And that project has never gotten off the ground because
oh
it requires about 5 people above me to sign off on it
yeah
and just let me talk to one other person so we could collaborate and finish that task. But I think it's often that way, especially in larger organizations, that productivity is has many abstractions in the way, and they're not necessarily related to the actual work itself.
yeah, like there's a lot of the workday that, the organizational politics, the unspoken social norms, the all the hurdles that come in place of having big organizations and boards. But when I reflect on working for AV, for example, um we have all the similar sort of hierarchy. We have a board and we have things, but yeah, there's kind of the autonomy to, you know, kind of, I guess I didn't need to wait a year to kick off this podcast. Um, I do things as my role to sort of like fail forward. So I guess that's a luxury in some scenarios where you have the autonomy to, you know, go out and do something. But at the same time, um, yeah, I suppose there's not like, you know, the safeguards in place.
When you were talking about being able to fail forward and having governance, but without it being restrictive, I think that's the ideal environment for me to be productive. And that larger organizations where there's too much bureaucracy, it really can get in the way, and
Yeah.
that can put me off as well. I like it where I'm able to see tangible results from my action. And it's harder for me, maybe it's the ADHD part of me, it's harder for me to work on something that might take years for it to come through, and then potentially after years of effort it just gets shelved because someone changes their mind way up top. Whereas smaller organizations, you normally can see output quite quickly.
Yeah, yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, and I think that's the great part about, sort of doing like the entrepreneurial thing, having some of building the autonomy back in your life as well. But when I talk about AV in that scenario, yeah, I still have that governance like block, but it's a fine line in an organization between that stopping, the flow of ideas and stuff, um, and just trying to overthink it. So, um, yeah, I guess what I mean by that is there's things that has to go to the board. I can't. Yeah, it's out of like there's a chain of command. There's things that have to happen. You know, But if you know that there's sort of processes where other people involved that are going to sort of, slow you down, I kind of just take the premises as long as they're happy, I'm happy,
Mm.
you know, yeah, because they're just, you can't count for that. So you really just got to count for what you can account for. But one of the things that's really great about the dynamic at AV is I've got lived experience. Everyone in the team's lived experience. But our GM, Leslie, she's neurotypical and has kids my age who are on the spectrum and that. But she boxes me in. So at the same time, I have the freedom to create and I can do things. She boxes me in again. Make sure the governance is there.
Make sure you don't do anything illegal.
Just make sure it's rational and because a lot of the things that I do, that's just that frustration with making it productive is it's often the policies need to change, the procedures need to change,
Mm.
and that might be the case, but you're still governed under those policies and procedures. So it takes a long time to change those sort of things.
Mm.
Um, so when you said about work that you could have been doing for years and then get shelved, in some part, I've been running my social enterprise for 5 years, and it's in the same position there. And normally I wouldn't be able to do that, but it's because of you know it might to a lot of people probably seems unproductive because you go, oh, you know, why you're still only running the market, the donut shop 1 day a week if it's quite widely successful and whatever. And the fact that I'm focusing on all these different things won't be productive to people. But it's like you have to understand that the long what's going to be a long game, what's going to be a short game. I stop, worrying about I don't know every step, realizing that you can only do your part. So again, break things down into the task. Realize it's you know I know yeah. I couldn't imagine your scenario where you coded something for that long and it's like or whatever it was. I don't have those same examples. Yeah, all right, Jeremy. So as we're going to have to close this episode off shortly, um, I'd like to really know. So as you have the focus bear up and you do a fair bit of thinking around um, how to make day to day life more productive and more efficient. What are some of the things that you find, um, make you more productive as an individual? And what are some ways that you can say advocate for your own neurodiversity and how you think that that makes you, you know, productive in the areas?
I'll give a few tactics that help, and some of them involve making adjustments to the work environment. So one of them is that I do best when I don't have people talking around me, and the best way for me to create that is to work from home when I'm doing focused work.
Yep.
And lucky that most of my jobs have allowed me to do that. And then some other tactics would be that are entirely personal, are about basic things like having a to-do list that I actually refine the night before. So I figure out what am I going to do tomorrow, and that really goes towards I could spend the whole day doing stuff, but not actually do the most important things.
Yep.
I've got an endless to-do list. So the key thing is looking at what's actually going to move projects forward the most tomorrow
Yep.
and planning that out in quite a lot of detail, because I can get into task aversion. There, even though we were talking about how it's great to delegate things, there are some dull tasks that can't be delegated
Yep.
and that I just have to do. And it's about finding ways to make them really clear, so I don't have the procrastination response of I don't know how to get started, so I won't do it at all. But instead, making it really clear, here's the first sub action that I'm going to take. And then also thinking about how can I make it more fun? So if it's a report that I have to write, how can I do it in a way where maybe I put slight in jokes in the middle of the report that most people won't notice, but it'll make me laugh as I'm writing it, and then
Yeah.
I'll enjoy the process. And finally, the last thing is making sure that I'm not burning myself out. And I spoke about that before in the context of making sure that I stop by 6 p.m. so I can be with my son, but also throughout the day, making sure that I'm taking time to do stretch breaks and drinking water. And that leads to a more productive day overall.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I've relate with some of them, and I actually practice similar things to that myself. The to-do list. I'm an avid to-do list person. Um, you know, having someone help me manage my calendar is also pretty good. But yeah, breaking like what you sort of said there is you're breaking down what your most important things are for the day. Make sure you get those core key things done so you don't feel like so you can feel like you've been productive. And I feel like that sort of comes down to micro chunking, and some people use things like the Pomodoro effect and stuff like that. So there's lots of cool frameworks that you can find, and probably can be found some of them on Focus Bear, I'd imagine.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, there's lots of cool hacks and things that people should, I think, look into and follow on from what you've just said, because um, yeah, the more clear you are, the more you break a big thing down small, the less intimidating it is. And quite often that whole stagnancy we get throughout our day at work is just because there's not much clarity. So
Mm,
I really liked
100%.
like that. Okay, Jeremy. Thank you again for joining me for this one. It has been a bit of a shorter recording. Um, as you know, we're new to this, and trying to make it all happen within the right recording times. But thank you for helping me open the conversation around the productivity debate for neurotypical people. And I feel like this is one that maybe me and you can probably even touch on a bit more on your podcast in future settings, maybe. Another great setting, I think, rightful place for this conversation. So yeah, I'd like to thank you for joining us today, and yeah, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed this episode. These topic spotlights only open the conversation, while our Career Network group and aligned topic touchstone meetings aim to reinforce and reflect on the themes. As our community's voice, I'm greatly aware that my voice, while relatable, must remain fueled by those I serve. That's what the World of Work ecosystem aims to do. Simply click the links to find out more. Thanks for listening.